Hello, welcome to Knitting Nicely. I'm Danielle Chauvet, your knitting coach, and today we're going to learn how to join two knitted squares by using two double-pointed needles. Let's head over to the knitting station. Okay, so here we are at our workstation, and we're going to use two double-pointed needles to sew up the two sides of these knitted squares. So first grab one of your double-pointed needles and a length of yarn, and you're going to put a slip knot in the end of that yarn. And you don't need a whole lot of length, just enough to weave in at the end. And you're going to use a simple backwards loop cast on to cast on 3 stitches. That's all we need for this join. So the first thing you're going to do is find the right side V, the first V on the right square, all the way at the bottom left-hand corner of your first square, and you're going to pick up a stitch from that V onto your double-pointed needle. Okay? Then you're going to use a right slanting decrease, so knit those two together, pull that new loop up. Then you're going to just knit the middle stitch. And it looks like I split my yarn there, so I'm working with cotton yarn. It does not have any stretch. You may want to use a more stretchy yarn if you have difficulty using cotton. There we go. I got my middle stitch done there. Now I'm going to slip that last stitch on purlwise onto my needle, onto my right hand needle. Find the next V on the bottom right hand corner of my other square, and make sure that I put it in from front to back, and then pick up a stitch. Then I'm going to knit those two together using a left leaning decrease. Then I'm slipping all 3 of those stitches to the other side of my double pointed needle and finding the very next V on the side of my knitted square, going in from front to back, picking up a stitch on that side, and then doing a right-handed decrease, right slanted decrease. So knitting those 2 stitches together, knit the 1 stitch in the middle, then slip the last stitch onto my right needle using a slip as if to purl with the yarn and back, then finding the next V and going in from the front to back to grab a new stitch. Use a left slanting decrease to knit those 2 stitches together, and repeat the process. Now this is almost like doing an I-cord that is joining 2 knitted squares. You're creating an I-cord, but you're also joining it to both sides of your knitted squares. So there we go. We get to find the next V, go in from front to back, pull up a new loop, knit those 2 together, the new loop and the other one, using a right slanted decrease, knit the middle stitch, slip the last stitch purlwise, find the next V, pull up a new loop from front to back, and do a left slanting decrease for the last part of that row. And that's all you do. That row is repeated all the way up. So now when you are doing your work, you've got to make sure that your squares are lining up, that the top edge is lining up still. So every once in a while put your work down and make sure that the next stitch that you are going to grab from the right hand side is lining up to the stitch you're going to grab from the left hand side. Often when we are joining knitted squares, the square that is that you're joining that is a side of the square will have fewer stitches than the square that is either a cast on or a bind off on the edge. So just make sure that you are easing your stitches together so that when you get to the top of your 2 squares, they will be even. Okay, make sure you grab both of those stitches together to make that left slanted decrease. because you always want to start out with just 3 stitches on your left-hand needle. Find the next V. Well, we should check it to make sure that it's lining up properly so we know which V to go into. See, I'm using my other needle to make sure that it's straight across and where I should pick up that next V. Do I need to go in the same V, or do I need to go up to the next one? Okay, looks like I'm going to go up to the next one. Make sure you're going in from the front to the back and that you're just grabbing the V, not any extra strands of yarn. Pick up a stitch from that side, do a right slanted decrease, knit the middle stitch, slip the last stitch purlwise, pick up a new strand of yarn, and then do a left-handed or left slanted decrease. Then slip all 3 stitches to the other side of your double pointed needle to get ready for the next row. Go through the front to the back, pick up that next stitch, right slanting decrease, and then knit the middle stitch, slip the next stitch, find the next V from front to back, pull up a new loop, and do a left slanting decrease. Alright, so that's how you do this I-cord join using 2 double pointed needles, and every once in a while I put my work down to make sure that I am making my 2 squares even, and so I know where to pick up that next stitch on my right hand square. You see this? Now I need to do it in the same V that I did my previous one so that it eases those stitches together. If you don't ease your stitches together, you'll end up with a very uneven edge at the end. So it's important to continue to check your work as you go up. Another way you could do it is you could pin the 2 pieces of work together at various spots on your 2 knitted squares that you're joining together. And that way you know for sure that as you join them together, they will be even. That's a little extra step that you can do. Now, you see here where I'm just about to knit those 2 together. That's incorrect. I need to make sure that I pull up a new loop first before I knit those 2 together. So I got to pull up that loop first, then knit the 2 together. Otherwise, the I-cord won't look right. It'll look funny. The yarn from one of your squares will show through on that I-cord, and it won't look quite right. So you got to always pull up a new stitch before you knit them together. And slide it down to the other side and just keep on repeating. Find that V, pull up a loop, knit those 2 together, knit the middle stitch together, slip that stitch over, pick up a new stitch, and knit them 2 together. I really like the way this looks because it looks very finished. And you can I'm using this really bright blue color, but obviously when you do yours, you can use the same color as your knitted squares or a color that is complementary to your knitted squares. The nice thing about this is that if you do choose to use a different color, it's kind of a nice design element because it does look very finished. It looks like it's supposed to be there, so that's why I kind of like this style. It does take a little bit of time to get it on there, but because it looks so finished and so neat, it's a choice that I would like to make for joining my squares together. All right, so there you go. There's the little knitted I-cord. The back looks really nice. There's no bulky seams on the back. On the back it almost looks like it's just pearls. On the front it's pretty flat. There's not really a bump. And you're going to go all the way up the top. Now when you get to the top, all you have to do is bind off as normal. So you'll knit the first stitch, knit the second stitch, pull the first stitch over the second stitch, knit the last stitch, whoop, get that on there, and then pull that one over the top of the last stitch. And then you'll pull your yarn so the loop is really big. You can kind of work the bind off so it's straight. And then just pull that yarn and cut it. Cut the loop and then pull the end out. And then you can weave in your ends on the back side going up and down on the purl bumps. And then you're done. That's how you can join 2 knitted squares using double pointed needles. If you're enjoying Knitting Nicely's videos, you can hit the like button and subscribe so you can catch all the great knitting tips.